Hello, today is the 26th of November 2025. I'm going to talk about tradition and authority and the three main words that we use in traditional education and formation. Verum, truth; bonum, the good. It could be translated as goodness also. And pulchrum, beauty. Tradition, as we know, the Latin word for it is traditio, meaning the transmission or the handing over of something. It was the act in classical times by which the offerer would hand over the key to the recipient. It was always depicted with as a key from my house to your house. That was transmission. You handed over a key, and that would allow from then on the key receiver to enter the house of the key giver. So tradition is not the worshipping of ashes with the fire long gone. It is a transmission, the giving, the handing over of that key to the new generation. The transmission not of ashes, but of the fire of knowledge. Authority, autoritas, comes from the verb augere, actually, to make grow. But authority has become a suspect word, hasn't it? Students hear it and they think authority, authoritarian. The mind goes straight to that. But the Latin word means to make grow. So it's not, the person with authority is not necessarily the authoritarian, but the person who is authorized to help you, the new generation. Yeah. So a person with authority is the person authorized. Authorized to do what? Authorized to pass on that key. And in times of technical vertigo, like ours, where innovations continuously transform our lives faster than sometimes we can even understand them, we need anchors. We need principles that do not perish. We need principles that endure. And for centuries, the West, we had these principles: Verum, Bonum, Pulchrum. Today, these foundations appear to have been abandoned, though. Still, they were certainly, when I was growing up, an integral part of our formation. Our formation meaning knowledge, education, proper, and character. Yeah, both together. The formation of a human being. And one of the calamities of our age is the reduction of knowledge to mere utility, especially since World War II. Well, this has been long coming. It started first of all with the Reformation, but then especially during the French Revolution, we always seem to come back to that point. And that is the difference is that even though the way of thinking was transformed during the Reformation, nevertheless, it was about not accepting the Catholic Church. But I don't want to, I'm not going into religion today, but it was not just about accepting or not accepting, no longer accepting the Catholic Church, but to substitute it with another religion or another interpretation of religion. But they kept religion. The French Revolution did was to say no religion whatsoever here, totally secular. Of course, it went back afterwards, but that was the main break. Yeah. So education was no longer in the same way, but certainly, leaving that aside, certainly since the end of the Second World War, we have seen also a transformation in education. And this is what, so that is why I say, well, I'm just going to look at it from, after the Second World War. So although it has changed over time, sometimes for okay, they change over time, but at the moment things have disintegrated to such an extent that many of us ask ourselves whether in fact we have taken the wrong path completely, even after the Second World War, whether we have been walking along the wrong path, not in terms of science and technology. That's, we have advanced there, but there is something missing. We know that in the human person. And perhaps we haven't done things as well as we should have done. So the question comes up, did we make a mistake by abandoning the old path? That old path, very Catholic here from Christendom, of knowledge and character, and then beauty as the crown. Today we have come to believe that the only knowledge worth having is whatever guarantees a quick return in the marketplace, training for a job or a career. But as I said, we have to perhaps, it's time to remind ourselves of our tradition, which is the Greco-Roman Catholic tradition. And it seems as if a lot of this tradition, our history, our culture, our literature, our roots have been put into this attic of neglect, dismissed as useless relics. Well, since I come from a Catholic culture where relics are not thrown out as useless objects, but revered as sacred, here is my argument. This grand modern experiment hasn't worked, not for the human whole person, not entirely. So I'm going to use the educational system, not as the only one, and specifically the university system, as an example, just to focus on something concrete and specific. Of course, we see it throughout, in politics and everything else. I'm just going to concentrate on the educational system and perhaps the university system as a focus. University studies have been reconverted really into professional programs, professional training programs. Sophisticated, yes, with powerful technologies, yes, but empty of wisdom. Real education, the real education, the whole being of the person crushed by a hodgepodge of purely instrumental knowledge, which, let's admit it, with great ostentation, I might add, present themselves, display themselves, offer themselves as to provide better opportunities to students. If you walk into a university at the very beginning of their university studies, into a classroom, you will see dozens of bright young faces. They're eager, motivated, ambitious at first, and then after a while, second year perhaps, certainly third year, you see that they have lost something. They have lost something. What is that something? It is not intelligence. It is not even discipline. It's something else. They do know, however, they are very aware, most of them at any rate, what it is that they want to do afterwards, after they finish. Yeah, um, which is good, which is good. But in pursuing of that aim, of that goal, what they want to do afterwards, something was gained for sure, specific goals, specific career, but something also was lost. And this is my point here. What is that thing that was lost? And I think Aristotle said it best, the desire to know. All men naturally desire to know. Not the desire to get a grade, to tick a box, to secure a credential, but the desire to understand, to ask, to marvel. That curiosity of the child that keeps asking, what's this? What's this? What's this? Okay, they don't have the time to ask, what's this? They're too busy. They have to get grades and pass exams. So it doesn't really matter what this is or might be. The question is it useful, whatever it is it useful for me? If not, I won't touch it. They don't have the time anymore to be curious, to pursue what they would love. Yeah. The result is that we have killed the desire to know, we have decapitated curiosity. It is not that the students have become rootless leaves, they are floating around with no direction. They have, in fact, but uh, it's not that they do not have direction, they do. The aim is a future career um, along one single isolated path. Their path is their career is their path, or their path is their career. Um, their life is that path. It is not that they have no direction. It is that they've chosen that path, and that's all they know. They're going to know. It is as if in your town you only know one street that takes you from here to there. Well, you can live very comfortably like that, but imagine if you saw the whole city and all the possibilities of going around. Your life would be so much fuller in that sense. Um, it's just a different way of looking at life, of looking at the world. And knowledge is now fragmented into tiny specializations. They are like paragraphs and connected, from the page of a book. This paragraph, that paragraph, and okay, so you know that paragraph, but you don't know what came before the previous one or the one that comes next, unconnected to each other, orphaned. All other disciplines which throughout time have been conceived in order to feed and to nourish and to satisfy that yearning for wisdom, because it would lead to a fuller life, have become merely more and more specialized, more and more fragmented, more and more disconnected. And degrees have become checklists, shopping lists, where students almost tick boxes, accumulate credits and graduate knowing almost nothing about, say, their cultural origins. So everyone ends up with the same practical skills, and in a global labor market of billions of people, it becomes almost a race to the bottom. As politicians like to say, they like to use, this is the new the new phrase. And all of it presented to the public, not in its raw form, what in fact it is, which is really just the buying and selling of courses and things and credits for profit, but embellished. They always need to embellish to hide its inner stark ugliness and vulgarity. All of it embellished with words like flexibility and optionality and multidisciplinary something or other, gimmicks that have turned the university into a kind of degree dispensing machine, degree dispensing titles and degrees that are more and more losing their value. One of the great calamities of our time is this, not what do I love that I would like to pursue? What am I good at? No, will it pay? Is it useful? Can I get a job out of it? It's like witnessing a funeral. Academic degrees in their traditional meaning, as they were known throughout history, are now relics of the past. As I said, they're just tick the box, CARS checklists, where the students start ticking off the courses that they take, like shopping lists when you go to the supermarket. You tick off the items and you put the things into the basket. And so they take more and more pointless courses, one after the other. And all this accumulation of courses may make a 19-year-old feel like, the king of mambo, but in fact is turning them precisely into that which the owners of the world want them to be, for which they crave. And many a young man, a young woman leaves university with lots of skills, but ignorant as they were when they entered. With trained skills, for sure, but to my mind, ignorant, orphaned of formation, of knowledge, of the origins of his culture, the cultural and moral origins, genealogy that explains his place in the world. And lacking that, what they are or have become is a really sort of cannon fodder for a labor market where all he can do is to offer, to submit his skills to the highest bidder, which often turns out to be the lowest bidder because I'm just saying, because bidders are now increasingly becoming more and more stingy with their rewards, more and more so in this world we are heading towards. Everyone has the same skills, practical skills as you do, computer science, okay, fine. So you want to sell your skills, it's a buyer's market, your own skills less and less valuable. A billion people out there. You're being squeezed out more and more. This race to the bottom thing, what really is a way of trying not to tell you that you are, as a young person, you are being squeezed out of breath. You will have nothing at the end, but you're supposed, or very little, but you're supposed still to be grateful that you can breathe. Immediate utility, fragmented training, temporary ephemeral entertainment. Today's students are drowning in specialization. They remind me of someone trying to understand the cathedral by staring at one single stone. They will know the chemical composition of the stone, the stresses that it can bear that stone. They will know its geological origin. They will know everything about that one particular stone, but they cannot see the whole cathedral, what it meant, what it means, because no one helped them, no one guided them to step back far enough to see it. If you ask students today, what is the story of your culture? Most of them freeze. They know dozens of apps. They can code, they can edit videos, they can run spreadsheets, but they cannot tell you why their civilization is what it is, what it looks like. They don't know. And it is not their fault. It's what we've done to them. Yeah, our generation. With this in the background, then, let me explain how it was once upon a time. So these three things, truth, goodness, beauty, Verum, Bonum, Pulchrum, against this collapse stands the classical Catholic tradition, rooted, as I said, in the Greco-Latin Christian worldview. Its goal is not mere job training. It is the formation of the human person, an approach rooted in this tradition. Plato had already said it, that education is formation, knowledge plus character. And that kind of formation should guide the soul out of the cave toward the light of the supreme good. Education is not, as some say, about the interpretation of the cave, for example. Everybody knows about the cave. I believe that they interpret it wrongly. Education or formation is not about putting sight into eyes that do not see. That would be instruction here. More and more and more and more things to learn. No, it's not about putting sight into eyes that do not see, but about enveloping the whole soul towards the light, guiding towards the light. They will guide them towards the light. Yeah, then they will have to find their own challenges, their own realities, but you have to guide them first. Yeah. So first of all, truth, very quickly. Real education begins with the search for truth, discovery. All men naturally desire to know, said Aristotle. Without truth, education becomes at best mere commodity. At worst, it could become indoctrination. The truth of things have to be there. Otherwise, you get merch. It's the beginning. Truth is the beginning, the starting point. It is not subjective. When we abandon objective truth, the reality, we lose the very ground we are standing on. In a world of algorithmic distractions and manufactured opinions, God knows we have a lot of opinions out there. Teaching young people, well, this could be mine, all right, but teaching young people how to discern truth is not an optional thing. It is actually nowadays even a form of resistance. Today, in this era that they call post-truth, what does that mean, post-truth, where opinions are exalted above reality? Truth liberates from ignorance and from tyranny at the end. Truth as the rational reason foundation of study. Because all these opinions that we've noticed, all these opinions that are exalted beyond measure, opinions on a wide variety of issues, often highly inflated. We are overwhelmed with opinions everywhere, commentators here, there, everywhere, giving us versions of reality. Of course, it is true. I'm not denying that there are many debatable issues in life, thank God. But the reality is that most things we judge or whose nature we wish to know, are things that are certain, are things that we can know, whose nature we can unravel. They are hiding a truth that is waiting to be revealed. So all men desire to know, the philosopher said, and the desire to know is fundamentally the desire to know the truth of things. This innate impulse is cultivated through philosophy, the sciences, the humanities. They teach us to discern the fake from the authentic. That is what it is, for us to know what is false and what is authentic. A truthful education frees the individual from ignorance, yes, but also from tyranny. Because if you don't have that, you can be easily manipulated. And knowledge in that sense does not depend on quantity, on how much you know, how many things you know, but on how you know. Creating responsible people and thinkers willing to penetrate to the heart of things, removing the chaff of appearances. But the truth alone is not enough. It must be oriented to the good, goodness, or the good, or the common good, forging not only the intellect but also character. Bonum as a moral compass here. And this is the axis that underpins, or should underpin, all education, that should permeate all disciplines taught at university. Aristotle pointed out that man is distinguished precisely from the rest of beings that inhabit the earth by his capacity for moral discernment. He is the only animal that knows how to distinguish what is good from what is bad, what is just from what is unjust. And C.S. Lewis said that moral laws are like primary colors, the primary ones. They are always the same, they are immutable, they transcend all cultures and all eras. They cannot be changed or replaced or superseded without destroying uh, in the case of moral laws, without destroying our human condition. We can delve deeper, we can know them more intimately, more deeply. The history of human civilization is the history of moral discernment. We become more civilized as we delve deeper into these moral laws that govern the universe, that governs our lives. But these laws are immutable, they're always the same. It is true that social manipulators turn up, as C.S. Lewis said in The Abolition of Man, who try to redefine or replace these universal moral laws by creating ethical systems based on subjectivity, on their wishes or desires or conveniences or usefulness. Those are ideologies. That is what an ideology is designed to do, to redefine moral laws. But to refine, to redefine it, to redefine them, or to replace them does not create a new moral system. Rather, it destroys or abolishes the human condition by producing or creating beings that are the product of their manipulation without free will or moral judgment, beings without conscience, or with a conscience so damaged to the point that they can be molded according to the interest of those manipulating them. You see that unless you possess this moral discernment, the powers that the powers behind these ideologies, whoever might be in power, will use you, manipulate you for their own ends, and the new ideologies and those in power, eager to push them on to you, somehow resemble Dostoevsky's The Inquisitor themselves now. The mission of a university must be to discover the true, the good, and the beautiful, because this is how you can truly form free people. The true and the good illuminate freedom. An education that ignores Bonum, the good, produces skilled technicians, more or less virtuous, yes, but morally neutral, incapable of contributing to the good in society. In contrast, and to the whole good, the well-being. In contrast, an education that embraces the good forms and educates integrally, wholly, totally the whole person, and that forms character. C.S. Lewis warned that when moral laws are replaced with ideologies, we create beings without conscience, people easy to mold, easy to manipulate. So that is why the universities should also teach the good, not as sentiment, but as an objective moral orientation, because it is the form to form character. Years ago, a colleague told me something unforgettable. He said, "My smartest student is also the most dangerous. He has brilliance without virtue." Dangerous, yeah, because intelligence without moral formation, without moral grounding, is like giving a child a sword or a gun and hoping that he uses it well. Let's move on now to Pulchrum, beauty, that aesthetic aspiration in all its forms. Unlike ugliness today, it reminds us that a human being does not live by logic alone or even morality alone, but also by the contemplation of beauty. Let me explain. The contemplation, the meditation, the sensitivity of the wonders that surround us. Aesthetic education by means of art, literature, music, and also the study of nature, as a matter of fact, awakens our sensitivity, the sensitivity of the soul. It gets rid of lots of dark, not dark, hard skin. Okay, so you can touch your soul. Yeah, that is what art does. Awakens the sensitivity and creativity. It humanizes knowledge. Plato in the Symposium states this very clearly. By means of beauty, we arrive at the good, because beauty attracts us to that which is transcendental, beyond ourselves. That is what beauty does. And Dante in the Divine Comedy, that I quote so often because I think it's just terrific and it's funny too. He culminates his journey in this vision of divine beauty, that love, he says, that love that moves the sun and the other stars. You have to read it, but without beauty, education is arid, is barren, is dehumanized. Schiller said in a letter on the aesthetic education of man, Only through the morning of beauty will you reach the day of knowledge. Okay, that's poetic language, but it's telling us the same thing. In an age that revels in ugliness or tries to overwhelm us with nonsense and banalities that numb our senses, it is necessary to form our artistic, creative, literary sensitivity, our aesthetic taste. We must become capable of appreciating this beauty because beauty ennobles the person. We have to be aware that also that in what our age is very commonly called art, sometimes it's it's something that is richly decorated, elaborated, put into a box with a ribbon. But there are two sides to this. First of all, that um, specifically designed for the enjoyment of the elite, beautifully packed, sometimes often referred to as high culture. That is one side that I'm going to critique, and the other side is the other one, the one that is normally called low culture or pop culture, popular culture, which very often is cheap imitation and of what art is, and on the whole, charlatanism. In regards to high culture, I say be careful. If you believe that it is high culture, you may have been deceived, especially if you think that high is referred to the people who attend those wonderful opera programs and so on. That is not what high should mean at any rate. But there is an emphasis, it seems, that tells you indirectly or gets to you unconsciously that somehow a Beethoven sonata is not quite for you, that you might not understand classical music, let us say. That's nonsense. What they're saying is that you are not capable, or worse, that you should not have access to that beauty. In other words, what they're saying is that you shouldn't have access to your soul being sensitive and reacting to that beauty. That's quite an insult. Because you are, and everybody is. Everyone has a soul, and every soul can be touched by beauty. Yeah. In other words, what they are saying indirectly is, you idiot, remain there eating with the pigs. Yeah. Concerned about your body. Never mind nourishing the soul. There with the pigs. They are actually denying you your soul. They don't want your soul to be touched by beauty. That would make it could be dangerous. That would make your soul sensitive. And what happens when you become sensitive and be able to discern? It would open like a flower. So no, stay there worrying about the body and rhythm and how to feed it and to pleasure it. Don't worry so much about your soul. So if you want to call it high, by all means call it high, because it with learning, with with training, let's say, it becomes more and more sensitive and you can appreciate it better and better. Yeah. Some people say it's difficult. Well, it might be. With music at first, it's like learning to walk. Yes, you may not, as a 2-year-old, be able to engage in a race, but you're learning to walk and you begin to listen, and more you discern the beauty of it. That is in music, in literature. You can read a book about, I don't know, how to get from here to there, or how, whatever. Okay. But in every great book that if you read it the first time as a teenager, you got so much, and then you get much more, and then you get much more, uh, and so on. So it is just because you're not being able to fully appreciate all its beauty, it does not mean that you're not capable to. You're just learning to walk. So don't let anyone tell you that that is not for you. It is, because you have a soul. But that's about music. In painting, for example, I would say that oh dear. There has it's not only that, but somehow they have there is a certain number of a rabble of petty artists that use, for example, art in painting and this uh, to become fashionable, to, oh, you don't understand it, to that enables them to live lavishly, frolicking in their pool of adulation. But this low or popular culture is it is harmless too. It might actually even cause greater havoc than the other one, the elitist one that everyone told you was not for you. Great havoc only because it is designed, or if you think that design is too exaggerated a word, nevertheless the consequences are there. It acts like poison. It poisons the masses by offering them, you see, ways of leisure and entertainment that flatter and stimulate your sensual appetites, while at the same time that they are stimulating you, they are anesthetizing the soul. It's not only that your soul is not opening up to beauty, but they are, on the contrary, anesthetizing it. Beauty, in the original sense of the word, is the nourishment that the soul needs to avoid being consumed by barbarism, to be consumed, to surrender to barbarism. It does not consist in enjoying entertainment that allow us to keep with the time, certainly to be fashionable with this painter, or engage in following whatever is viral today. Obviously not. It is to civilize us. And this false art that pervades everything is like a gas poison. Uh, it's nothing more than an immense collection of cheap trinkets to keep people distracted, subjected to stimuli that not only do not refine taste, getting deeper into the soul, and not only do they not nourish reason, but on the contrary contribute actually to emptying it out, emptying the soul out, contribute to its emptiness and to its rottenness and to its decay. It's all a falsification of the concept of what art is. What they do is emptying creativity, the beauty of creation, of creativity, robbing it of its essence and its substance. That is what artistic creation is. And instead, filling it with nothing, with whatever it is that they fill it with, it's nothing but a shell full of crap, a subversion, cheap fakes enthroned instead of the true king, you see, the true artistic effort displaced. And what is worse is that then people lose even the notion of what beauty truly is. So we teach students how to thrive in the market, but not how to discern good from evil, how to optimize performance, but not how to live well. We are not nourished by logic alone or by moral instruction alone, but by the contemplation of beauty, whether in nature, art, music, literature, architecture. So beauty should never be dismissed as a luxury. Beauty is the nourishment of the soul. Beauty does that, even when you don't expect it, even when you don't ask for it. Okay, so contrast that with what people call art today, a parade of shock and noise and vulgarity and high-priced pretension. Real beauty elevates, fake beauty distracts. So, let's go back to tradition and authority then. We must recover these two words, tradition and authority. Remember, tradition, the handing over of the key to someone, to the young when they didn't even know that they needed that key. That key not to lock them in where we are, but to let them enter now the house of civilization, to make them heirs instead of orphans, to give them the key with what we have done with the civilization that was given to us for them now to meet their own challenges. It is not, as I said, it's not the transmission of ashes, the worship of ashes. It's the transmission of fire, the fire of knowledge. And if we refuse to pass on what we have received, the new generation, does not become more progressive. They become amnesiacs. So from the university, we should be handing over the key that allows the new generation to open the door to knowledge, to those who come after us, for them now to be equipped to respond to the challenges that reality will present to them, their new realities. But this handing over is not something meaningless. It is not barren of meaning. It is not dead. It is not a routine. On the contrary, in that handing over, the time, what we're saying is that the time has now come for us to bow back to them and retreat, meaning we are giving them ourselves, our contribution to them, as our forefathers earlier did to us. And we are handing over the legacy we have received from them, the legacy that was handed to us. But now, of course, with our experience, we have added to it, we have added our imprint to it. This is what we are giving you, the new generation, with our imprint, what we have renewed, what we have added, what we have enriched with our own personal talents. We are, by transmitting the tradition, we are transmitting actually our heartbeat, our very human warmth to them, our very life to the new generation, now for them to now take it and respond to their challenges and their realities, and have their own imprint on that same civilization and tradition that they will in turn pass over to their children. And education and formation is the highest expression of that tradition. With this tradition, the teacher gives his student a criterion or criteria for judging now their own reality, structure of values and meanings that protects them from anything, from the elements. This is the true education, formation. Education is not giving the student a mounting of hypotheses for them to judge reality as they wish or they see fit, or for them to call truth whatever they want it to be as they wish. Give them hypotheses, yes, to be sure, but under the guidance of the teacher first, in order to teach them how to reason. Then a good teacher is going to point them where their own logic may be failing. But the thing is that we have to give them a something, hand over a something, pass over something concrete. Only once the student has received that something, that key, is it possible then for them to stimulate their own freedom of judgment, not before, so that they can themselves now subject the values we give them to their own inquisition. Yes, to scrutiny and debate, even in many cases, why not to refutation and to rebuttal, of course. But you see, when no criterion, when no value is given, passed on, for them to interpret their reality, what we've done, in fact, is to deliver students and young people to chaos and disorientation. That's why the university has to hand over alongside with tradition. Why the university needs to reclaim another concept, also viewed very negatively today, is the concept of authority. I said at the beginning, it comes from the word auctoritas, which comes from the verb augere, to make grow. But it has become a suspect word, and students hear authoritarian. Yeah, no, there is a difference between authoritarian and authorized. A tree grows toward the light because something above it shows the direction. We grow through authority, not domination, but guidance. Without that guidance, with that authority, students will not be liberated. They will be abandoned in chaos, abandoned to chaos. A person with authority is not authoritarian, but an authorized person, one who helps us grow, who reveals reality to us, who has walked further on that path. So without tradition, we become orphans of time. And without authority, we become victims of chaos. Only those who have been enriched by this experience of authority, as luckily I have, of the authorized person, can reach maturity in a way that allows him to confront reality and to be able to judge critically everything, every reality. You're able to judge it critically. But you see, in order to critique, you need first a criterion with which to critique. What is that criterion? Authority is what provides us with this criterion, this criteria. And by using this criteria, then we then can rectify the argument, complete the argument, expose it to debate, even challenge it. Why not? But if authority is lacking, then criteria is lacking. And without criteria, any development of personality becomes a frantic race without a northbound direction. It leads to confusion and make us more prone to the fashions, makes the students more prone to the fashions of the day, of the age, to the fleeting nature of the temporal and the ephemeral and the fashionable and the viral and all that sort of thing. Where there are no teachers with authority, the transmission of knowledge and that tradition is sidelined, prevented even from growing, and the university becomes a kind of workshop to train flexible and adaptable entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, equipped with diverse competencies and abilities and skills and technical knowledge in order to do what? In order to enter the job market, their integration in the workplace. Is more to life than that. In short, people who will never be able to teach anyone because they have never been disciples themselves. I once asked a group of first-year students to name one event from their own country's history prior to 1800. Almost no one. A few could say one or two things, but out of context, without knowing the consequences or the whys those events had happened, no idea. What were the consequences of those events? Why did they get there? What happened? You know. And yet they can flawlessly tell you all about Marvel characters and TikTok trends and celebrity gossips and all that. It's not their fault. This is cultural starvation. Cut the roots and the tree dies. Cut the past and the person withers. Only those who know where they come from, we've heard many times, know where they're going. Without the humanities, therefore, it's not just a department of humanities that they have to have, it's that the humanities should be everywhere. Even if you're studying engineering, whatever, study engineering, fine, and computer science, fine, but know how to read a book. It will add so much more. It will also teach you how to think inductively, not only deductively. Because without the humanities, we lose our memory. We lose the ability to fully comprehend the present. And the present is more than just machines and engineers. The present is everything around you. And then we lose ourselves. Cut the roots of the tree and it dies. And starve the child from his mother's breast and withers. And a culture without memory becomes cannon fodder for manipulation. So Verum, Bonum, Pulchrum is not nostalgia. It is a necessity. It's the integration of reason, will, and emotion into a whole human being. And universities must once again become temples of knowledge and bastions against these new forms of tyranny. And if we want to rebuild education and rebuild civilization, we must return to these old concepts of truth and goodness and beauty and respect for tradition and authority. That was my video today. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.